Hi there, moms. Welcome to Raising Mommy, a podcast sanctuary where moms can come to listen, share, learn, and grow. I'm your host, Kimberly Tyson, vegan blogger for eatplantsforlife.com, wife and mom of two. On today's podcast, joining me via phone is Trudy Nan Boyce, a retired lieutenant for the Atlanta Police Department and now a crime novelist who was named Georgia Author of the Year in 2017 for her novel Out of the Blues. And she also has two other books, Old Bones and The Policeman's Daughter, which I recently read. She is also a mom of one and grandmother of two. Today's episode is brought to you by Emory Women's Center at Findlay. As part of Emory Healthcare, the largest and most comprehensive hospital system in Atlanta, Emory Women's Center at Findlay offers women the highest level of care. Whether you're looking for a gynecologist for your annual well woman checkup, an obstetrician for pregnancy care, or a reproductive health specialist, Emory Women's Center at Findlay is known for outstanding women's health care. Our physicians provide general gynecological care for women of all ages, including all dimensions of pregnancy and prenatal care, as well as preventative women's health education and management. You can depend on unparalleled medical care delivered by specialists who work with you to develop a personalized treatment plan. For patient appointments, call 404-778-3401. Emory Women's Center at Findlay is located at 12,000 Findlay Road, Johns Creek, Georgia, 30097. Today's episode is also sponsored by the Little Gym of Alpharetta and Johns Creek. At the Little Gym of Alpharetta and Johns Creek, we specialize in unique educational classes that revolve around enrichment and physical development for children's ages 4 months through 12 years. Programs offer children a springboard to life's adventures by using movement-based learning and imaginative play to help build the confidence and skills needed at each stage of childhood. To learn more, visit thelittlegym.com/Alpharetta Johns Creek GA or RaisingMommyPodcast.com. This episode of Raising Mommy is also brought to you by Wix.com. I enjoy using Wix because I'm a novice when it comes to building websites, and Wix makes it so easy for a novice like me. It's easy to set up. The instructions are user-friendly with lots of great templates to choose from. Go check out my site at RaisingMommyPodcast.com or go to Wix.com to get started on your website. Enjoy the show. Trudy, thank you for being a guest on today's show.
Thank you so much for having me, Kimberly.
And thank you for all of your years of service.
Well, it was my pleasure. Most of that time, I really felt like it was a great opportunity for me to experience communities and people in ways that I never would have had the opportunity to have experienced. And also, I have to say that the Atlanta Police Department is a really wonderful organization, and I felt very, very fortunate to have had a number of assignments while I was working for the PD.
How long did you serve with the Atlanta Police Department?
I was a police officer in the city for more than 30 years.
Wow. And when did you retire?
In 2008.
So was it always your passion to become a police officer when you were growing up? Or was there someone in your family that was a police officer?
It never occurred to me, actually. My father's family were all educators and clergy. I went to school and I got 3 degrees with the idea of practicing clinical psychology.
Mm.
And I don't know. I think that some distant adventure-seeking gene kicked in with me, and so after I got my terminal degree, I practiced as a police psychologist for about 5 years, and then I just kept thinking it looks like more fun to do crisis work on the street as a police officer. So I went through the academy then and worked projects for many years and became a detective and the hostage negotiator, worked homicide, crimes against children, and some other special projects that I really enjoyed. But yeah, it was a great career, a great opportunity for me, and in some ways, it kind of mirrored my dad. My dad was a minister in rural churches,
Mm-hmm.
and back then, nobody called, didn't have counselors, or you didn't call the police. You called the minister, and my dad was always going out on emergency calls for this or that, marriage counseling, substance abuse. Of course, they didn't call it that then.
Mm-hmm.
The uncle came home drunk and tore up the house,
Mm-hmm.
and Dad would get calls. So it, in a way, I think I'm carrying on my dad's tradition.
So, have you ever been injured in the line of duty?
Just minimally. I had a concussion from a fight one time, and then some bangs and bruises. But nothing serious.
So, what came first? Were you a police officer first, or was motherhood first?
Yes, motherhood was first, and my son is now 50 years old. So I've been a mother for a long time, and have two extraordinary grandchildren. My grandson just graduated from high school and is going to school on scholarship to Reinhardt University,
Mm-hmm.
and my granddaughter is an amazing young woman. She was the first girl to wrestle for her middle school,
Wow.
and she's the first girl to wrestle for her high school. And she's also a good student and is interested in poetry and Shakespeare. So go figure, she's a really interesting combination.
How do they like having a grandmother that's a retired lieutenant?
Um, I think they just have kind of grown up with that, so
Mm.
it doesn't seem extraordinary to them. They think it's funny when I occasionally use police strong language, that because they have to, put money in the jar when they use that kind of language.
Right.
But sometimes grandma will come off with something that you hear that on the street and you hear it in the PD. So the occasional
So
profanity
so
gets out there some of the time.
was there ever a time during your career, being a mom, that you reconsidered being a police officer?
I think I always felt that I was doing good work and doing important work. And even though it was hard from time to time, and I know my son says now, in retrospect, that it was scary for him.
Mm.
And I guess maybe if I had really understood or felt that from him, it might have been a question. But I think I wasn't scared on the street, and I felt like I could take care of myself. And so I tried to reassure him. And I guess, you'll always think in hindsight, I wish I'd done a better job with that. Knowing now knowing then and what I know now.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think he was more frightened of the work than I understood at the time.
So what was it like for you as a mom, because you were front row to a lot of heinous crimes and drug addiction and children that were victims of crime? What was that like as a mom to endure that?
I think at the time, you're so busy trying to do a good job and to intervene in people's lives in a way that keeps them safe or helps them to go a different direction. There was a great deal of empathy, though. I think that's one thing that, as a mother, you can really feel the desperation of some mothers and the pride of some mothers and the joy of some mothers. And so ideally you do identify with people even in the most difficult circumstances. So if you are doing an intervention with people or de-escalation with people, I think that you are able to identify and put yourself in their shoes. Now, I always prided myself on being able to do that with people. But, I think it hasn't been until I became a writer that I've really been able to explore what it's like for people who are in circumstances that are vastly different from mine. I mean, I have a character in a reoccurring character in my books called Little D.
Mm-hmm.
And he represented, at first, he represented kind of that ubiquitous gangster on the street who's selling drugs, and he's wearing the baggy shorts and the white T-shirt, and is always hanging out in the corner, usually with other gangbangers. And you think, we pass by folks like that on the street, and we think, why don't they get a job, get an education, do something with your life? But it wasn't until I started writing the character of Little D that I really had to put myself in his shoes and be able to understand that what motivates Little D is the same thing that motivates you and I, only he has access to fewer and different resources than we do. So he ends up being a very full and important character in my series, and it really important to the protagonist, Salt.
So is there anything about your law enforcement career that you miss since being retired?
Well, I miss some of my colleagues. I miss the connection with some of the communities that I had, although I am still somewhat involved. I now sit on as a volunteer on the Citizens Review Board, which is an organization that is kind of a final resort for people who have complaints about the police department, about some incident or some particular police officer, and don't feel like their complaints have been addressed, because the board is made up of citizens, and now I'm a citizen. So I'm still connected in that way. There's nothing quite like, though, I was a hostage negotiator for my entire career, and there's nothing quite so satisfying as being able to talk somebody off a bridge or getting somebody to put their gun down, and that immediacy of saving a life really felt important to me, and it felt like, gosh, you have made a difference here.
So did your son decide to follow in a similar career path, or is he doing something totally different?
My son is a full-time stay-at-home parent.
Okay.
And he's done an excellent job. And but in its own way, that's kind of an alternative. It's not a usual career path for a man. And I have to brag and say he has done a great job, because both my grandkids are excellent scholars and athletes. So I'm very proud of him. And they have a homestead or sustainable farm land near Athens, Georgia.
Okay.
And they have organic chickens and organic crops and goats and dogs and cats, and
wow.
And they do good things. And my daughter-in-law is the professional. She works for the University of Georgia Library, and I have to say that I think that she gets a lot of credit to my son, because she's really gone far in her career, and with the confidence that she had somebody who really cared, taking care of her kids. So.
Absolutely. So when most people think of retirement, they think about being an empty nester, traveling, taking up a hobby, spending more time with the grandkids. But you chose to reinvent yourself and make a career out of your other passion. You used your on-the-job experiences to spur a writing career. So when did you become interested in writing?
I was always a voracious reader, and I kind of got hooked on police procedurals really early on in my young adulthood. Joseph Wambaugh, and then there were some others that I really liked, and then there were these great ensemble TV programs: Hill Street Blues, Homicide, NYPD Blue, and so I was kind of hooked on reading, and I began to write in 2001 after a series of personal and professional tragedies. I was working at the time in crimes against children, And so, as a sergeant, I was a sergeant in charge of a shift of detectives. And so, it was my job every day to come in to collect the reports from the field from the day or night before, and from um, child and family services would also report to us. And so, it was my job to read about 30 or 40 reports every morning alleging some uh, sexual abuse of a child, physical abuse of a child, neglect, missing children, runaway children. And every day I assigned those reports to my detectives for investigation. It was really, really horrible. In
Mm-hmm.
fact, when 9/11 happened that morning, I was doing my usual reading, and one of my detectives called me into the break room to see the planes flying into the buildings. And I took a look at it and then turned around and just went back to the stack of tragedies that I had on my desk. I had to continue to, take care of those folks too. That year, also, my best friend of about 30 years, who kind of friendship that you call each other on the phone every other day. We had been in attendance through the birth of our children and tragedies and singlehood and all of that together. And anyway, that year she died of breast cancer.
Oh, no.
And so my marriage at the time, that was also all already under some stress,
Mm-hmm.
crumbled at the same time. So that same year, so I said, you know what, I'm going to need. I had been involved with my friends' um, caregiving too, right up until the end. So I said, this is going to leave huge holes in my life, and I need to find some place to try to make sense of this. And so I enrolled in Callenwall at a creative writing class, and I was fortunate enough to be enrolled in a class with an amazing instructor. And the first pieces I did, I was given a lot of encouragement, and I said, "This is what I need to be doing." And I I workshopped my first novel
Mm-hmm.
for about 8 years, learning to write fiction,
Okay.
and it's been quite the amazing journey.
So you took your class and you worked on your book. How did you go about getting published?
Well, after I when I once I completed the novel,
Mm-hmm.
I and this kind of happened around the same time. I had a friend who was writing a novel, and he asked if I, since I had the police experience, he had some um, police uh, information technicalities in his novel. And he wanted me to read it to be sure he had it right,
Mm-hmm.
and I did. And we started talking about writing, and he already had an agent. And he said, "Let me introduce you." And it just happened to be this amazing agent, New York agent, um, who I submitted. He made the introduction, and Nat asked me to send him the first 60 pages of my novel. I did, and he liked what he read, and he took it. And in a year, he had found a publisher for it.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yes, it was. It's kind of all about, in some ways, about connections with people, and you know, I just feel really fortunate, and that he sold it right away once he sent it out. He and of course, being a New York agent, he knew who the people that would be likely interested in it, and it was one of the big publishing houses, Penguin Putnam Random House.
Mm-hmm.
So uh, it was. People say, "Well, that was kind of an overnight," but I had been working on the novel for 8 years, so
Not quite
so
overnight.
yeah, and I'd been workshopping it for that long too. So it
Okay.
wasn't just, I'd had first readers and a lot of revisions, a lot of revisions. Some people say that novels are written in revision,
Mm-hmm.
and I certainly did a lot of revising. Yeah, I was learning to write fiction.
Right. So I've had the pleasure of reading The Policeman's Daughter, and I thought it was an excellent book.
Thank you.
Very detailed. You could tell that you weren't a writer that shadowed someone from the police department. You could tell that you were closely tied to law enforcement. So I enjoyed reading it. It was really good. And your other two books are on my wish list.
Thank you.
So is the protagonist Sarah Alt, aka
Uh-huh.
Salt? Is she a real
Uh-huh.
life character?
Is she what?
Is she a real life character?
Well, certainly, what she's experiencing in the novels, many of those situations were inspired by things that I experienced or that colleagues experienced. The characters are many of them are composites or amalgams of people that I knew both in the police department and on the street and citizens. And so I think almost all fiction is in some way autobiographical.
Mm-hmm.
But if you know your characters really well, Salt is much younger than I was,
Mm-hmm.
and stronger, faster, prettier. But she also had some really serious tragedy in her background that I did not have.
Mm-hmm.
So she's a fully developed character, and I will put her in situations that were similar to something I experienced, but she has her own way of reacting to those situations.
So you've encountered some of the experiences that she has.
Sure, yeah, or colleagues,
Right.
colleagues of mine. Well,
But you don't have a dog named Wonder.
I do not have a dog named Wonder, but I did have a dog named Spirit
Ah.
who herded sheep. So,
Oh, wow.
so yes, yes. I went through a period of time where I had my dog. Somebody had given me a border collie Aussie mix,
Mm-hmm.
who was not all black like Wonder is, but and he was a high drive dog, and I ended up needing to give him a job to do. So I found somebody in Vinings actually that taught sheep herding and brought sheep down from um, North Georgia for people to put their dogs on stock so they could learn to herd sheep. So
Wow.
I spent a couple of years doing that. So I did know a bit about what I was talking about with the
Mm-hmm.
sheep.
So what inspires you to write? Like your three books, what inspired you?
Well, many people have said that, and Anise Nin said that we write to taste life twice.
Hmm.
And other people have said that we write in order to understand experiences or the world. And I think both of those are true for me. I think that writing has been a way for me to explore some pretty serious tragedy that I experienced when I was on the police department. It's when you're a police officer, where you do any kind of emergency work, you're so busy doing the job that you don't have time to react as normal people would react if you in working murders, for example.
Mm-hmm.
I was a homicide detective for 5 years, and you are expected to investigate. I had one example would be I had a crime scene where I had an entire family that was murdered. There were 7 people in a very small house, and they were all dead. And I was in that crime scene for processing that crime scene for over 8 hours.
Wow.
Now that's not that is a situation that anyone would be traumatized by.
Right.
But as a police officer, you really don't have the luxury of stopping to be traumatized. You have a
Mm-hmm.
job to do. So I think that writing has really helped me to explore how that felt and how I was not able to have an emotional reaction to that then.
Mm-hmm.
So some of what I do, I think I'm experiencing those situations again, but this time I'm able to sort through them and to examine how that feels now and how it felt then. So in many ways, this is writing is therapeutic for me too.
Mm-hmm. I can totally see your book as, at first I thought blockbuster movie, but Salt has a story that would be a great TV series. If that were the case, who would play Sarah Alt?
Oh gosh. Uh, I don't know. I think there's so many great actresses out there. What is the woman that did the boxing movie?
Boxing movie?
She was um,
Hilary
bringing it.
Swank?
What was that?
Hilary Swank? My
Yes,
producer just told me
yes.
that. Oh,
Oh, yeah. I really
I
like it.
could see that.
Yes, uh, but maybe somebody also. I don't know, bigger, stronger.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but she's got. I think she has the intensity.
Yeah. I could see too. I could see maybe, and maybe because she had her own show that was in law enforcement, but I could see Jennifer Lopez maybe
Oh,
about 15 years ago
yeah,
as
yeah.
Salt. Um, because she was pretty. I don't know if you ever watched her show Shades of Blue, which they don't run it anymore, but it was pretty good. She was a pretty good law police officer, pretty tough, strong.
Yeah. Well, and one thing that's been interesting to me in writing, because the novels are set in Atlanta,
Hmm.
and we have Atlanta is a minority majority city. With the issue of race does come up in the novels,
Hmm.
but in such a way that I hope makes it conversational. But I think that almost all the characters could be played by a person in a race that you wouldn't automatically associate with the character.
Hmm.
So, I mean, it's possible that Salt could be a black officer,
Hmm.
that Pepper could be her colleague, but could be white. So, I think that there are a lot of ways to do that that would be interesting to explore too.
So, where's your favorite place to write? Do you have a hiding spot, or do you have an office, or do you go on the deck to write? What's your ideal spot?
Well, again, I'm pretty fortunate because even though we have a very small house, my husband is retired from the music business and he dealt with artists.
Hmm.
So he is really good at making sure that I have the time carved out and that I have um, the time to be by myself. And we have kind of what we call a library, a media room, and I have desk and computer and writing space and all my books. It's a small room, but it's multi-purpose. But I have that for, as long as I need it to be able to do my writing. And what's probably more important to me is I have a specific time to do that.
Hmm.
I walk the dog in the park early in the morning, and then have from about 9 o'clock till noon or 1 to get into the writing table and write it down.
So, what do you like to do besides writing? What do you enjoy doing?
Well, we do have the dog, so
Hmm.
that's good, and the grandchildren are very active in their athletics. So I get to go see them in their wrestling matches. They're both in martial arts and wrestling,
Hmm.
and my husband and I travel. We both really like jazz and blues, and he was in the business, so he's able to determine. We're lucky to live in a city where there's so much good music available, and also living right downtown
Right.
is very helpful. So he's a great cook, and so we like to. He likes to cook, and he fixes great meals. And we really have a neighborhood. Grant Park is a really wonderful neighborhood in that we really know our neighbors, and we are a community.
Hmm.
And so we spend time in the park, and we spend time with our neighbors. We have a book group here in Grant Park that's really active and really close friends. So we do that, and also I try to stay in shape. So
Hmm. Aren't we all?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, for your book, Out of the Blues, you said your husband was in the music industry. Did he give you some ideas or did you pick his brain for that book?
Well, really, it was the idea of that. The crime that occurs in that book
Mm-hmm.
was really inspired by the death of a bluesman, and so that was kind of what one of the driving forces for Out of the Blues was, that the death of a bluesman and an actual person. And also, I think that if I got to go do it all over again, I might be an ethnomusicologist. I really love learning about the roots of American music
Mm-hmm.
and its roots in Africa and the Caribbean, and how that came through New Orleans, and what the different uh, musical influences, how they came together. First of all, for the blues, which came out of field hollers and work songs,
Mm-hmm.
and then jazz grew out of the blues. And so I really am. I'm very interested in music, and he has one of these encyclopedic minds that
Mm-hmm.
remembers all the details. And he worked in the music business, so he already knew a lot about. He made some co-produced some jazz documentaries. So I'm really fortunate to be married to somebody who is a great resource, and he sent me delving into all these books on the blues and then listening to the blues. He has a great collection of music, so it's nice.
So, what are your future plans? Are you working on your next book? Will we see more of Salt?
I am working on a fourth novel. It is a standalone with different characters,
Okay.
and I'm about maybe 2/3 of the way into a very rough draft.
Mm-hmm.
Novels at least in my case, are written in revision. So I'm workshopping it, and I'm enjoying the process. I'm not on deadline for this one, so I'm able to spend time doing research and trying to really hone the work to a place that I'd like for it to be.
Do you have any upcoming appearances?
The Decatur Book Festival is a big one,
Okay.
and I will be at the Decatur Book Festival. I believe that's on Saturday, of the book festival, and I think that's at 11 o'clock. I don't have the venue yet, but when they come out with the schedule, my name will be amongst the artists, and so anybody that's interested can certainly look at the schedule and look up my name, Trudy Nan Boyce, and you'll see that I'm going to be there this year. So I have been for the past 2 years, I guess.
And
3 years.
that's August 30th through September 1st,
That's
correct?
right. That's right. Thank you
Okay.
for asking about that.
Absolutely. So, what advice do you have for moms who have a desire to reinvent themselves and chase a career or totally do something totally different from what they're currently doing? What advice do you have for them?
Um, I, it's almost a cliche that you need to follow your passion, but I really do believe that you invest more heavily in those things that you feel strongly about. So, and I think that it's important not to edit your imagination in that. One of the most important advice, the best advice that I got while I was in the process of learning to write fiction, the jazz composer Wayne Shorter said that when you're creating, one of the most important things that you can do is to create like a child, as a child creates, and children don't have any limits on their imagination. When my son was little, he would tape a piece of celery to the wall and call it art, or he
Mhm.
would draw a picture of a skunk,
Mhm.
and he would draw the skunk on the front side of the page, and he would put the tail on the back. And that's really what children do.
Mhm.
I think that as we age, we're too quick to censor ourselves and say, "Oh, I can't do it that way," or "I can't do that." And so, whenever I'm writing and that occurs to me, "Oh, you can't do that, you can't do that," that's a signal to me to go ahead and do it. Now, I can come back later and edit, but if I don't do it, that moment of creativity will be lost. So I think that's important too, when people are considering what they want to invest in terms of their time, and not throw away something that uh, tickles you at first, and makes you happy, and you think, gosh, I wish I could do that, but no, I can't do that. Well, that's a signal you need to go ahead and pay attention to it at least. So let your imagination run wild and say, what would be fun? What do I really enjoy? And then once you've made the decision that that really is of interest, I think it's really important to persevere, so that when it gets hard, you go to your art or you go to your passion and you continue to do it.
That's great advice.
Well, it's worked for me so far. So,
Well, I appreciate it, and I appreciate you being a guest on the show today.
oh, thanks. I completely enjoyed myself. I really love talking about policing and writing. So, thank you.
You can learn more about Trudy by visiting her website at trudynanboyce.com. She is the author of 3 books, Out of the Blues, Old Bones, and The Policeman's Daughter. You can find her books on Amazon.com, Audible, iBooks, Barnes & Noble, and Google Play. Be sure to find Raising Mommy anywhere you listen to podcasts. Check out new episodes every Saturday. Visit our website at RaisingMommyPodcast.com or find me on EatPlantsForLife.com. Follow us on Twitter at RaisingMommyGA. Search for me on Facebook and Instagram at Raising Mommy Podcast or Eat Plants for Life. Email me at raisingmommy@appenmediagroup.com. As always, thanks for listening.